The Stone Zone, with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. I am not Roger Stone. I am Mark Vargas, Newsmax columnist and editor-in-chief of the Illinois Review. Roger is unavailable today, but he will be back on Monday. I can assure you of that. But what's the Stone Zone without a little love from Roger Stone? Let's listen to this clip.
Geez, getting a table out of the Capitol all by yourself, how would that have even been possible?
I'm 5'1" and 122 pounds, so I'm still trying to figure out that myself. When I was questioned by the FBI, one of the first things that I said was, I'm being charged with theft of government property. And they responded that, yep, you stole a table from the Capitol. And there wasn't much, reasoning outside of that. But I don't have the table with me and I don't have the capacity to carry a table. So I'm still trying to figure that out.
We've got an incredible show for you today, and there's breaking news virtually at every moment. But today's show is one that you don't want to miss. We're going to start today, the first half of the show, discussing the upcoming confirmation hearing for Health and Human Service Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. As you know, that is going to be a contentious confirmation. And next week, he is scheduled to appear before the Senate Finance Committee on Wednesday and the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee on Thursday. He's got 2, and as you can imagine, the opposition from Big Pharma and the deep state establishment is going to be intense, but we know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has the support of the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. He has the support of MAGA, and he has bipartisan support because of the work that he has done across the country for so many years. But let's think about this. The United States of America is in the middle of a public health crisis. We are the most powerful country on the planet, yet we are some of the sickest. There have been studies after studies talking about that Americans live with more illness and disease than any other person in a country around the world. Think about that. We live with more illness and disease than any other country in the world. Secondly, our children are dying at rates far higher than children in other wealthy, developed countries. And this is completely unacceptable. The most powerful country in the history of the world, and our citizens are living with more disease and illness, and our children are dying at rates far higher than kids in other wealthy, developed countries. This is just a couple of examples of why it is critical that the United States Senate vote to confirm Robert F. Kennedy for Secretary of Health. But there's another aspect to this that is extremely critical and oftentimes doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And that is in Indian country and the issues and the crisis, the public health crisis facing Native Americans across the country. And just late yesterday, the Coalition of Large Tribes, COLT, just endorsed Robert F. Kennedy's nomination for Secretary of Health. And joining me today on the Stone Zone is OJ Semans, Executive Director of COLT. OJ, welcome to the Stone Zone, and it's an honor to have you on the show. How are you today, sir?
Good. Start by saying Madakia Pivichosani Awo Kelo Hihani Washte. Basically, I'm saying hello, my relatives. I wish you health and help and good morning. And honored to be here.
Honored to have you. OJ, the Coalition of Large Tribes, could you give just the Stone Zone viewers just sort of a high level overview of COLT?
Sure, I'd be honored to. First of all, the Coalition of Large Tribes, in order to be a member, you have to have 100,000 acres or more of land. Of the 574 tribes, only 52 meet that criteria. Those 52 tribes control 95% of tribal lands, 95% of energy, and also half the population of Native Americans. So we're a big organization. Our goal is to look out for the best interests of large land-based tribes and the populations that live within the reservations.
Yesterday, OJ, the Coalition of Large Tribes wrote an endorsement letter for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination. And I have to tell you, and we're going to show this from your website, but this is one of the strongest endorsement letters that I've ever seen. Give us a little of the backstory on this letter and why you have come out so strong in support of Robert F. Kennedy to be the next health secretary.
Well, Mr. Kennedy actually came to a Coalition of Large Tribes meeting, and he spent like 4 hours with us. And we were able to discuss matters that were very, very important to Indian country, and he had no qualms about answering us honestly and straightforward. If there was an issue that he couldn't give us a direct answer on, he said, you know what, I'll work on it with you. We will find an answer. Indian country has been devastated for having terrible health care since the invention of IHS. I always say IHS, the only thing they get better at is getting worse. And so they get better at getting worse every year. It was really important, not only because of his spending time with us, but his family's history within Indian country. I actually, when I was a small child, when his father was running for president, I attended a rally in Rapid City, South Dakota, and as a kid, I was sitting on the top of the bleachers there. And when he got done speaking, and again, I didn't know what was going on. I just thought it was pretty cool. When he got done speaking, he walked by, looked at me, and kind of rubbed my head affectionately and said, "Nice seeing you, son," and walked on. And that has actually stayed with me all my life. And so it was an honor, actually, not only to endorse him, but to ensure that everybody, the U.S. Senate, knew that we are strongly supporting Mr. Kennedy. We believe that he is probably the best person that IHS and HHS would ever have that would be able to provide proper health care to our people under our treaties.
You're exactly right. The Kennedy family has a long history of supporting Indian country. And I believe, OJ, that his father even campaigned in nearly a dozen Indian reservations, which was unique in of itself, but it shows the family history. And your story about his father when he was running for president and rubbing the top of your head and the affection that you felt from that moment, you've carried that on, and it's interesting, and I love that story you shared with me that before that you do that to your own children, and it's sort of a way, I think, your way of honoring his father. Tell us about that. I love that.
Well, yeah, I mean, excuse me, as a child, when that happens, you actually get a feeling, from that, an emotional feeling, and it actually made me feel really good, and I carried that on, and so I do that to my children. I do it to my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, and if they walk by, I'll affectionately rub the top of their head and give them a hug and all that stuff. But it's not only did his father come to Indian country, but Bobby came to Indian country too. He's got Lakota names. His children have Lakota names. I mean, we are, hooked to him hip and hip. It's like having family.
The COLT endorsement is extremely powerful and influential. And I believe it was just last week, Senator Daines, during the confirmation hearing of Governor Doug Burgum to be the Interior Secretary, Senator Daines opened up his comments before asking a few questions of Governor Burgum. He opened up his comments citing the COLT's endorsement, and he actually read several sections of your endorsement letter. These endorsements, OJ, are not something that COLT takes very lightly. Explain to us kind of the process behind this.
Well, basically, the process behind it is we check with the tribal leaders first. COLT is run by tribal leaders throughout Indian country, and we sit down with them and we ask them what do you want to do? And a lot of them on this case with the Department of Interior, a lot of the tribal leaders have worked with him and really felt comfortable with endorsing him because of his working relationship with Indian country. And we did the same thing with Mr. Kennedy. This time, the majority, all of the COLT executive board and other tribes were present. So they were able to have a conversation with him for, like I said, like 4 hours. And there wasn't even a hesitation, a pause whatsoever when we brought up the fact that he's running, being nominated for HHS. What should we do? It was unanimous. We were going to support him in every possible way that we could.
I think that's terrific, and I've discussed about the issues, about American children are dying at rates far higher than any other developed and wealthy country. Americans live with more illness and disease than any other individual around the world. But I want to talk about, because this doesn't get enough attention, and with a Robert F. Kennedy as the Secretary of Health and Donald Trump as the 47th president, I really believe in my heart of hearts that there could be a significant impact to improve the health services. And there's something that I wasn't necessarily aware of, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but OJ, can you talk to us about hearing aids and what we don't realize is the challenges of these. This is something that seems very basic and simple, and that I wouldn't think about if I needed at some point hearing aids. Explain what happens when Indian country, when somebody's losing their hearing either in one ear or both ears.
Well, basically, you better hope it's one ear, because you're only allowed one hearing aid, and you have to decide which ear. So, I mean, your test is holding your hand up to your ear and saying, does this one work? But no, you're only allowed to have one hearing aid, and that has to last you anywhere from a year to 2 years without any problems to being replaced. And it may sound simple, but a lot of our elders are suffering because of the fact that their hearing loss is so great that they can't have a discussion. And it makes it even more difficult because a lot of our elders speak in our traditional language, and you have to be able to hear that in order to understand what they're saying. Honestly, there's so much wrong. I mean, about 5-6 years ago, we actually worked with Senator Brasso, Senator Thune, and Senate Majority Leader Thune now, Senator Rounds, and at that time, Congresswoman Christy Nome. And it was so terrible at IHS. I mean, they would clean their surgical tools using hand water and scrubbing them that way. There was babies that were born in the bathroom. They found that the overall healthcare being provided to any country there was so poor that they came in and shut IHS down and put them on restrictions. we were able, working with the congressional people there, to have hearings, not only in Washington, D.C., in the House and the Senate, but we had hearings within Rapid City and other locations where people were able to talk about how bad the healthcare was. And, since that time, I can tell you right now, we still have, first of all, we don't have surgery anymore. We complained about it, so they couldn't do it right, so they never brought it back. We don't have a maternity uh, clinic in which we can have children born here on our land, our reservation. They have to be flown out. And the only ones that are actually born here is because they're so close that they're born on the stretcher before they can get them in an airplane and fly them out of here. So even then they're looking, I mean, they're in danger because we don't have the proper physicians in order to take care of them if there was a issue. And if you look at it, Native Americans in the death during birth rates is higher probably than any other race within the United States, and yet we don't get the care. I mean, it's just terrible how we've been treated throughout the beginning of IHS.
It is heartbreaking to hear these stories. And historically, IHS continues to be underfunded within HHS. Tell us some of these challenges that you continue to face year after year, administration after administration, of these financial challenges for a budget, despite an enormous need, uh, and a budget that is always grossly and incompetently underfunded. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, we've been fighting for years in order to have the funding for IHS be continuous without having to go through the budget process year after year and being approved. Anytime there is a shutdown within the government, it actually shuts down our IHS facilities, in which then we're not able to get what little care we have. But we've been trying to seek additional funding. Some of our hospitals are so terrible, and they can't provide services because even their electrical circuits, their internet, I mean, everything is so dilapidated, so outdated that they can't provide that care. And so what we wanted to do, and that's another reason why we really are pushing for um, Bob, Bobby, is because of the fact that he understands this. He's been to the reservations. He's seen the type of healthcare. He's talked to the people that have suffered from this type of mistreatment. And so he has personal knowledge and his own humanity to say that this is wrong and we need to work and do something about it. And that's HHS secretary. It's not the interior where they have to deal with this because we're under them. It's because of the fact that he cares, and to us that is more important than any other reason why he should be nominated. I've heard the talk and about him and stuff, and they don't know him. I mean, they don't know his heart is truly to serve and help the people. And like I said, we will do anything we can to endorse him. And just like the Coalition of Large Tribes, we're in like 25 states. We have and work with our congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle. We're not political. In that we want to work with the Republicans, the Democrats, the independents. And so when we did that endorsement, it not only went out to leadership, but it went out to, I call it the congressional delegation within the COLT territory, in which we sent it to all the senators that work with tribes within the United States.
That's incredible. And I want to show, I think we've got, for our producer, we've got a link, and let's scroll through so they can see the endorsement letter there from COLT. And a big thank you to to the chairman, because he is, his leadership, and this is such a beautiful letter, Chairman Renville, Garrett Renville. I want to thank him, and I'd love to have him, the chairman, on the StoneZONE as well. But this is such a beautiful letter. OJ, I have to ask you, you've met with a lot of congressional leaders, you've met with a lot of people, given your position and the influence of the Coalition of Large Tribes. In your some of your conversations with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what is there one particular story that sticks out to you most, that you still kind of that you still think about, a warm interaction, or something that he said that still sticks with you today?
Well, honestly, anything he says sticks with me today. I mean, the man's a great man. But when he was in Las Vegas, he was brought to the front of the meeting room, and the tribes honored him. I mean, they presented him with star quilts. They knew that he was carrying on the legacy of his family, and his words of speaking that my heart is with you, and I will help you, with what is your issues. Um, it's just he's a powerful man, and he's emotional. So you don't just hear his words; you feel his words.
What's your message? Because there's a lot of talk in Washington, and what's your message to those like Senator Cassidy, or Senator Warren, or Senator Sanders, or Senator Murkowski, as they weigh his confirmation, uh, weigh what he says during the confirmation hearing, and his incredible record? What's sort of your message to those senators that have been non-committal on supporting uh, Robert Kennedy's confirmation?
It's real simple. If Mr. Kennedy can focus his attention on the poorest people in this country and recognize how bad their health care is, he can also recognize the problems within the institution that has created these types of issues throughout the Indian country in healthcare. And he would be able to give it a look at with a good heart, a good mind, and a moral soul, in which he knows the decision he makes reflects upon the life and death of millions of people. And I know him as being such a man that his decision would be for the best of the people, not for the best of the institutions.
You know, Brief and I just have a couple of minutes. Again, I'm so honored, OJ, to have you here on the StoneZONE. Separate from health, we have literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of women on reservations that have been murdered and or missing. There are issues that aren't getting the attention it deserves, and I commit to you and to others that I will do everything and that I can, and using the platforms that I've been blessed with, to shine more light on this. But talk to us a little bit about these additional challenges separate from healthcare challenges.
Oh, well, we have so many. MMIW, or missing and murdered Indigenous women or people, is an epidemic basically with throughout Indian country. And again, it comes back to lack of law enforcement. It comes down to lack of funding throughout Indian country, in which we have people that have been are not just women, children. We've had men, I mean, that disappear or that are found murdered, and the cases aren't solved. I mean, there's thousands of cases out there where they haven't been solved yet. And families have never been able to get at least the knowing of justice for the death of a loved one. The Coalition of Large Tribes, we actually work with tribes and local city and state law enforcement. We put on MMIW training throughout Indian country. So it's it's really important, you know, that we get that word out there of how an epidemic such as that is affecting Indian country throughout the United States. And I really appreciate you stepping up and saying you would help us with that message, because honestly, from Indian country, you hardly ever get to the main media to cover something as important as this healthcare, MMIWs. I mean, we lack law enforcement. Law enforcement alone to cover millions and millions of acres, we're supposed to get like 3.5 billion, you know, but the BIA only gets like 2 billion. So I mean, we know we're not going to get what we need. So that's a constant, not only with healthcare, but working with Congress on improving funding for our law enforcement programs.
OJ Semans, the executive director of the Coalition of Large Tribes, a big thank you to you for joining us here on the StoneZONE. A big thank you to the chairman. I look forward to having the chairman on the StoneZONE very soon. But again, it was an honor, sir, to have you, and I look forward to having you back on soon. Thanks again for joining us.
Opila, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day and a good weekend. And thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you so much. I mean, just think about these issues plaguing Indian country that the average American is completely unaware of. The conditions that they live in, the fact that their health care is so grossly underfunded, the fact that there are no OB-GYNs anywhere near these reservations, that they have to put them on an airplane. They are literally hundreds and hundreds of miles away from doctors. They don't have hospitals, the electricity problems. I mean, these are third world conditions here in the United States of America, and their budgets are always grossly underfunded. This just reiterates why Robert F. Kennedy Jr. needs to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And the message to all U.S. senators who are thinking about not wanting to vote to confirm RFK Jr. as the next Secretary of Health and Human Services, you can believe that there are going to be well-funded primary opponents, because a vote against MAHA, Making America Healthy Again, a vote against RFK Jr. is a vote against President Donald Trump and the wide and substantial and massive mandate that he won by in November. The American people want change, and that change not only includes securing our borders and restoring our First Amendment rights and ending censorship. It's about sending the most violent and dangerous criminals back to where they belong, putting them in jail. It's restoring law and order. It's also making America healthy again. And you do that when you have an agenda that's led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the Health and Human Services Department. So we'll be following more along on that. But it is outrageous. It's a sin to sit back and watch Indian country suffer. We never think about it. If you go deaf, you got to figure out which ear you're going to have for a hearing aid, because you're only issued one, and not a relatively new hearing aid. You're wearing the hearing aids that cover your entire ear, the old school hearing aids. These families are in Indian country are suffering when it's cold. They're burning their shoes, they're burning their clothes, they're burning furniture in order to stay warm and keep their families warm when temperatures drop. This is unacceptable, and we need to fix this. We'll continue to use our platforms, every platform and resource available, to continue to shine light on this. But transitioning now, it is my honor to welcome to the StoneZONE Sheila Williams, co-founder of Able Child. Sheila, welcome to the StoneZONE. It's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having Able Child on. We really appreciate it.
Of course, and sort of a natural progression here. We're talking about the first half of the show, talking about the upcoming confirmation of Robert Kennedy Jr. for HHS Secretary, and now I think it's just happened naturally, a natural transition to talk about what you're doing, your work with Able Child. I have to acknowledge that I wasn't as familiar, but what I've been studying over the last day, watching some of your interviews, following your social media, I think what you're doing and the work of Able Child is doing God's work and exposing. And I want to break some of this down. But for our viewers and our listeners, please share with us the mission and what you're doing at Able Child.
Sure. Able Child works on informed consent regarding psychiatric products and services. So antidepressants, even implants. So what we want to do is make sure the consumer knows that there's dangers associated with antidepressants. I started out as a mom with 2 sons in the public school. My son was identified through the Association of School Psychology through a checklist, which is not based in any science, and was told that he has ADHD. And so we did not choose that route, but we never received all the information of just how bogus ADHD label is, and that it's just a front group for the pharmaceutical companies. So I've spent the last 25 years working with Able Child. Now I'm working with these mass killings and trying to get the mental health records of these killers, these mass killers. And we worked on Sandy Hook and Tennessee. And we're trying to get legislation passed for the disclosure of these mental health records to find out what exact mind-altering drugs that these young children are being placed on.
Yeah, it's interesting. Talk to me a little about these mass shootings and sort of what you're discovering on what you're trying to shed some light on, because I think that's really interesting, and it's actually a point that I think what you're going to be discussing that oftentimes gets overlooked or completely ignored. Talk to us about sort of the dots that you're all connecting with these.
Sure. Well, with Sandy Hook was the first mass killing we worked on. And what we did was sued the state of Connecticut for the mental health records of Adam Lanza. We worked investigatively for a year trying to uncover the mental health records. We got Homeland Security to arrest the treating psychiatrist that was treating Adam Lanza. And we also worked in Tennessee on a piece of legislation which was harpooned by the FBI and also the pharmaceutical industry, where the FBI could not, the behavioral health could not train police officers that were funded by the National Alliance of the Mentally Ill, where they were training these police officers in Tennessee to overlook the actual information on the toxicology reports. They were really doing, we can't report on this, we can't get this out because of stigma of the mental illness that these killers would have. And so we're trying to uncover the mental health records of these killers throughout the country.
Sheila, I have to apologize. I'm embarrassed. I called you Williams Matthews, and it's right in front of me, and I can read. My goodness, it's my apologies for that. I think I had a Joe Biden moment. Unfortunately, I can't wait for that stuff to rub off, to get that off of me. But my apologies, Sheila Matthews. Sheila, I've watched some of your other interviews, particularly with Bannon, and he had brought up something that I was completely unaware of, and that is schools are labeled medical facilities, and you see like the line of kids to get medication at school from like the school nurse. I mean, it looks like an interstate going into Los Angeles or Chicago or New York City. I mean, there is a log jam. But the fact that they're labeled medical facilities is very, very interesting to me, and I didn't realize that. Tell us a little bit about that and what appears to be an over drugging of our children.
Right. Well, Steve was going on about, and he's correct, that our schools should be a place where children thrive mentally and not mental institutions. And basically, the Association of School Psychology is getting a tremendous amount of data from the pharmaceutical industry, and they're giving out false information, fraudulent information to parents on the false claims of this label ADHD. And then based on that, they're trafficking children into a psychiatric drug use. And so basically the big thing that President Biden did was he passed sweeping legislation to now have mental health clinics within the public education system. I'm hoping that this new administration will wind those fundings back, but basically they want to be able to write in without parental consent, diagnose your child with depression or bipolar. It's the psychiatric billing Bible, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which the government has fully embraced without any scientific evidence of them truly being based in science. So our country has been facing an onslaught of psychiatry in the public school systems, in our everything, in our churches. Everyone is into this push for more mental health, and it's this type of legislation that is creating more and more patients and clients for the pharmaceutical industry. So that was really kind of what Steve and I were talking about, because he had no idea that children were being diagnosed off these checklists, which have no science behind them. It's like, do you get up out of your seat? And boys actually are really susceptible to this. And then we are drugging the military. I worked with Steve Bannon on following the case of Robert Card in Maine. And he was under psychiatric care. I believe the military is actually still being sued from some of the victims of that mass killing.
One thing that sort of, Sheila, that I kind of think about is a lot of this is a kind of a phrase, parental coercion. And I know that you've kind of discussed this in previous interviews. Talk to us a little bit about, the parental coercion going on in this issue that creates grave concern.
So that's really how I got tied into Bobby Kennedy's group, the Children's Defense Organization, and also Reform Pharma, is because they did coercion. Basically, the definition is they're going to force you, they're going to take your job away, they're going to threaten you with your child can't be educated because you don't place your children on these psychiatric drugs, you refuse to do this psychiatric evaluation. And so when COVID came out and people were losing their jobs, that's coercion. When they say you can't work in this hospital because you're not vaxxed, that is coercion. That is against everything, every part of human rights you can talk about. And so our organization works on informed consent, meaning give parents and the public as much information as possible. And then the right to refuse. President Trump talks about the right to try different pharmaceuticals when you're dying and you're facing these awful health issues, which we agree you should have that right to try. You have the right to refuse. That is not codified in law enough in this country. And coercion is you should never lose your job, your career, or be threatened, which parents are the state taking your child because you refuse to put them on psychiatric drugs. So that is coercion. So we were very attracted to Bobby Kennedy. We don't work for either political party. We work on human rights. And so we have joined forces with them. We're going to be honoring, we have a fundraiser coming up, an awards dinner. We're going to be giving an award to Jim Hoft from the Gateway Pundit, and two courageous women that work for Bobby Kennedy and Reform Pharma, and a doctor, a local doctor who stood up to the hospital and stood up to the state of Florida regarding COVID and coercion. He lost his job at Cleveland Clinic Hospital. He was coerced to leave because he would not take the vaccination.
You know, what's interesting is, during COVID in Chicago, for example, Sheila, a judge, it was a hearing between two divorced parents, custody hearing, nonviolent. They were both great parents. But the judge in Chicago asked the mother, was she vaccinated? And the mother said no, and explained and said, I have supporting documentation from my physicians. I've got an issue and I cannot get vaccinated. And the judge made the decision to strip her visitation rights from her son, her only child, because she was not vaccinated, essentially citing her a danger to her household, and gave full custody over to the father, who, by the way, was shocked and tried to argue that she's a great mom, she's just not vaccinated. Fortunately, there was enough pushback that reversed that. But this seems to be sort of a dangerous trend now. We're beginning to see during the winter season, some blue states are trying to reinstate these COVID era mask mandates. They're starting to push vaccines again. This is really a slippery and dangerous slope to be on when you're threatening to pulling your children away from you because of your decision to vaccinate or not vaccinate.
Absolutely. That's how we got involved with Sandy Hook. Actually, one of the parents that Able Child was working with, the state refused to give her son back because she no longer wanted to medicate him on a cocktail of psychiatric drugs. This is a very slippery slope. There's two main things in medication or the medical field is do no harm, informed consent. And we have seen over, oh gosh, I want to say many, many years of a perversion of this and informed consent. I've testified in Connecticut in the aftermath of Sandy Hook against the sweeping funding that was coming in fraudulently through the investigation that went on there in Sandy Hook. And every time one of these mass killings happen, more and more funding, mental health and psychiatry come into our society, into our schools. And psychiatry is very coercive. We have the Baker Act, we have, the ability, it's the only industry that can take away your liberty. They can say you're crazy and without no blood tests, without any brain scans. So it's a very slippery slope. And then you have the mental health courts that have been set up with the help of the mental health industry, big pharma and the behavioral health industry, that are doing these rulings where, you know what, you've committed a crime, and instead of going jail, you could go into treatment. And, President Trump a little bit touches that on catch and release, but it's really catch, drug, then release. And so we've moved away, our justice system has moved away from actually holding people accountable for their behavior. It's a billion-dollar industry that is operating in our schools, in our military, and our organization is very small. We've been working on this for over 20 years. And, we're calling on President Trump to release the mental health records of Adam Lanza. We're very supportive of Alex Jones. We believe that he was railroaded, and we have evidence to help him get a little bit out of the situation that he's in, where we're hoping that we could get in touch with him somehow. But overall, we're asking for the release of the Butler documents of the assassin the supposed assassin that tried to take President Trump's life. We believe that those documents are critical. The fact that they haven't tied the investigation to this kid, they keep drilling it in our head that Matthew Crooks killed, attempted to kill President Trump, but we just don't have the evidence and the facts to support that.
And I know we've just got a few more minutes. I'm honored to have you on the StoneZONE here. I find this just so informative and fascinating, and I'd like to do whatever I can to help as well. But going back to what you said earlier about sort of the justification, the kids need to learn, this helps improve their learning environment, but yet we're seeing that these numbers are horrific. They're in the gutter in terms of math and writing skills and reading and comprehension. I mean, across the board, even in wealthy, affluent communities, the test scores are not getting better, they're getting worse. I mean, how do we really address this? I mean, clearly over-drugging our children is having a significant impact. And this just isn't because of COVID. I mean, this was happening pre-COVID as well. How do we address this?
We take back the grant system. Able Child was named after President Eisenhower's Able Child grants, and they were diverted into mental health. So I believe there's hope, hopefully under this administration, is to take back the grant system, the block grants that are going into the different states, and harness them back into math and reading and developing these really bright children that have been drugged and isolated and institutionalized, that have so much to offer this society. Imagine being told that you fall into this ADHD category and you're imprisoned in that the rest of your life, thinking there's something chemically wrong with you when it's a lie, and your characteristics are gifted and talented, and your ID has been stolen. So Able Child believes there's a great opportunity to reform the grant process and put restrictions through the federal government on exactly the money that's going into our school systems.
Last question, where can people follow you and get more information?
Sure, ablechild.org. We have a great letter on there that parents can put in their school folder called the Hatch Amendment, named after Senator Hatch. And ablechild.org is doing a huge awards dinner in Vero Beach, Florida. And you can get tickets on there. You can support us, donate to us. We do not take any federal or state money. We believe we should have the ability to get community support and speak up against power. So we thank you so much, and Roger, for having us on. And it's lovely to meet you.
It's my honor. Sheila Matthews, co-founder of Able Child, thank you for joining us. Make sure you go to their website, get engaged, and get involved. It's absolutely essential. Now, switching gears in the last, I think, 10 or so minutes that we have here on the StoneZONE, let's talk about breaking news and do a little bit of political commentary, something that I enjoy very much. President Donald Trump has pardoned 23 pro-life activists, peaceful pro-life activists. Let's take a look at that signing ceremony yesterday at the White House.
Next, we have a set of pardons for peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 23, sir.
23 people were prosecuted. They should not have been prosecuted. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this. They'll be very happy. So they're all in prison now.
Some are out of custody.
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous, absurd. And we're going to play in this next clip a video of Bevelyn Williams. You know what she was charged and convicted of and sent to prison for? For preaching and praying outside of an abortion clinic. She was one of the individuals, the patriots, who was freed by President Trump's signature and got that pardon. Guilty of preaching and praying outside of an abortion clinic. And she was sent to prison by the Biden administration. Let's watch her being released from jail and reuniting with her family.
Look at mama. Look at mama. Look at us. I got your jacket. Let me take it. Yeah. Woo! Go. Go. You still smell good. You still smell good. It don't matter.
You want to talk about making America great again? This is how you do it. Again, we are relieved that this dark chapter in our nation's history, the 4 years of the Obama, Biden, and Harris administration, are finally over. President Trump is restoring our rights. He's protecting our faith. He's protecting our First Amendment rights. And as a result, Ms. Williams and so many other peaceful pro-life protesters are now finally reunited with their families because of President Trump's compassion and his desire to make America great again. And again, this is how you do it. You also do it by shutting down our southern border and shipping out the most violent and dangerous criminals, individuals who have a very dangerous background, individuals who have a criminal history of rape and murder and sexual assault and sexual abuse, not just of other adults, but of sexually assaulting and abusing and raping women, young women, and girls. Let's get them out of the United States. And ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what President Trump is doing. The deportations are beginning. Let's play a quick clip.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
ICE Boston quickly takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction.
Señor, ¿cómo se llama?
And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking. Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies. And in a sign of shifting priorities with the new Trump administration, this man, who was in the same apartment.
And in addition to rounding up and arresting these violent and dangerous criminals, the southern border has been shut. Troops have been sent along our southern border. And guess what? The illegals are videos of them hysterical and crying because they can no longer book flights and travel and sneak into our country through our southern border because President Trump promises made, promises kept. I also want to talk about how he's also ending censorship in America. Let's watch this clip.
In addition, I'm pleased to report that America is also a free nation once again. On day one, I signed an executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America, and we've saved it strongly.
And yet again, another example of ending censorship in America is freeing those 23 peaceful pro-life activists, again, for guilty of, what are they guilty of? Preaching and praying publicly outside of an abortion clinic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why this was the most important election in the history of our country, or some would say the most important election since the Civil War. It's also refreshing to know that we have a president who neither hides in the basement or hides from the press. And President Trump has already spent the last several days spending more time with the press than Biden did in his entire 4 years. But he's not hiding from the press, and he's not hiding from the questions, and he certainly wasn't hiding from Sean Hannity, who had an exclusive interview with the president in the Oval Office. Let's take a look at this clip.
Yeah, right, my last question. Me and I got your staff is going to kill me, and I don't want to get. I have friends here. Fine. I'm not Obama. You're not Joe either. I'm not Joe. No, they had very strong rules. Obama staff too. They stopped him from speaking, and Joe, they usually didn't let him start. No, they're fair. That's the best part of the interview right there.
I mean, the president obviously and clearly has so much work to do, and his schedule is jam-packed, and Hannity was just trying to move the conversation along, knowing that the president's time was limited, and the president's staff behind camera was saying, last question, we got to end the interview. But President Trump wasn't ready. And in another clip, I'm not going to play this for you, but in another clip, Sean says, we got to wrap up. And he's like, president responds and says, basically, I'm not ready yet. I'm not done. Let's keep going. How refreshing it is to have a president that's willing to answer questions and explain to the American people what he's going to do or why he's done something. President is also not afraid of calling people out. And yesterday, during a live video feed speech to attendees in Davos, President Trump uses the world stage. Talk about censorship. President Trump uses the world stage to call out the Bank of America CEO for targeting conservatives. Let's watch this clip.
And by the way, speaking of you, and you've done a fantastic job, but I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives, because many conservatives complain that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business. And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong.
And last but not least, President Trump's presidency is a divine presidency. And let's watch this clip.
Do you believe that moment, people say to me, they see a change in you? Do you believe you've changed? Is this, for example, increased your faith in God? Yes, I think so. I don't think I've changed, but I think that has taken place, yeah. Because when you look at statistically, I should never be here. I mean, if I don't turn I'm looking at an immigration chart, my favorite chart ever in history. Yeah. Even if the numbers were bad, I would. I mean, we're talking about assassination, and you're telling jokes. No, no, but it's terrible. No, I remember that day. Like when I turned, and it had to be at an exactly 90-degree angle, and I said, throw down the chart or something to that effect. And they bring the chart, and I'm literally looking exactly at the right angle. I couldn't have even been a little further or a little bit less. It would have whacked, because it was 1/8 of an inch. The entire ride was 1/8 of an inch.
A divine presidency indeed, and look at all of the things that President Trump is doing to make America great again and to restore our individual and religious rights. It's absolutely amazing. Please keep President Trump in your prayers for his safety and for strength in guiding and leading our country. That's it for today's episode of the Stone Zone. Roger will be back on Monday, I can assure you. Until then, thank you for watching. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?